I like Mario Cristobal in the long run. I like Brent Venables in the long run. If you don't like Lincoln Riley right now, you're just like a UCLA Bruins fan. What is up, everybody? It is Jake with Master Football back at it again. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be up to date on all things EA college football and get plenty of college football content, subscribe to this channel right now. I also do some pro football videos, some Madden videos, anything related to football. Subscribe to this channel right now. Please do so. Please subscribe. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Do all that stuff. I really appreciate it. Without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, guys, we are far enough into the season now that we can have a safe conversation about who's been doing well, who hasn't. We have a good opportunity to check in with a lot of first-year head coaches. I'm telling you right now, there's going to be a lot of programs that are available coming this off-season, and again, most of them will probably be filled up around Thanksgiving time. I'm telling you, watch out for that. Around Thanksgiving time, you're going to see a lot of coaches getting pride here and there, a lot of conference championship game conversations, things like that. There's going to be a lot of interviews during that time. Remember, because of the early recruiting window, mid-December, they need to get a coach in place to make sure they have an opportunity to go out there and recruit. That being said, we want to make sure we can check out the head coaches right now. Again, we're about halfway through the regular season. Some teams a little bit farther, some teams a little bit shorter than that. We're about halfway through. Let's check in on a couple of these first-year head coaches. So here you are with sports.yahoo.com. We have college football's first-year head coaches with the most to prove in 2022. I'm going to highlight a couple of these. A couple of these I don't think are necessarily bad stories, but they're not the stories that I want to talk about. So we come down here and check them out. The number one we have here is Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly comes over from Notre Dame to LSU, signs that big old 9-figure deal, $100 million to come over and coach the LSU Tigers. How's he been doing so far? So far, he is 4-2, and again, we just had a loss this weekend to Tennessee. Tennessee looks like they're a pretty good squad. Remember, this is his first year at the team. The team had just fired, Ed Orgeron, fired Ed Orgeron, so he didn't make it. They were very close to winning this game against Florida State, and again, there was a block PAT. They had a miraculous last-second touchdown, things like that. It's been all over the place. They had Jaden Daniels, quarterback from Arizona State, comes over. He looks like he's going to win that exchange between those two programs. But right now, like I said, 4-2. They are getting into the meat of their schedule, so they have an at Florida matchup, and with another head coach we're going to talk about pretty quick here. And then look at this stretch right here. We go Ole Miss at home, Alabama at home, at Arkansas, home against UAB, whatever, and then at Texas A&M. It's going to be tough. So it's going to be tough for them, but I do think that LSU, they benefit from a lot of things going forward. They're always going to recruit well. Even if their recruiting classes aren't at the top, they're always going to have those local guys from Baton Rouge, from New Orleans that want to go to LSU. They want to wear that purple, they want to wear that gold, and so on. So they go to that team. Remember, a couple of years ago, it got on regular, like we say right now, where Alabama looks at Georgia and they see them eye to eye. It used to be the same way with Alabama and LSU, whereas Alabama was typically a little bit more refined. LSU always has raw athletes, so I think they're going to be fine here. But Brian Kelly comes over from Notre Dame. Notre Dame had a couple struggles there early on in the year. But, other than this one crazy loss right here, they could be 5-1. They are going to head into the meat of their schedule. They'll ultimately probably make a bowl game. They only got to win 2 games remaining here to make a bowl game. But, they're expecting big things from him, so we'll see how it goes. Number 2 here is Lincoln Riley. They are off to a great start. They're undefeated. I don't really find this story super compelling, not because I don't think it's compelling, but because I think there's plenty of people talking about it right now. Lincoln Riley off to a really good start. They're going to get a couple more games here, have to play at Utah, have to play UCLA. There's a couple difficult matchups there, but I do like, what they're doing down there in USC. Marcus Freeman to Notre Dame. We'll see with him. I know they had a couple bad losses early on. They lost to Marshall. They beat North Carolina. Good for them there. Lost to Ohio State. They've been kind of going back and forth. I can't really decide what they are, but I do know that, again, like I said, one of the most coveted jobs, Notre Dame, really, really good program. But, we'll see what he can turn into eventually down the road. The next one I want to talk about here is Mario Cristobal. My brother grew up a big-time Miami Hurricanes fan. Miami Hurricanes, they are never short on speed in the same way that LSU's always going to have athletes because they can walk off campus, go to Baton Rouge, go to New Orleans. Miami's always going to have athletes of some sort because if you walk off campus, there are 10 zillion high school athletes around that area. Basically, if you just draw a line from Jacksonville over to the Gulf and down, if you just recruit there, you can find your entire team. I will say, what our dear friend Mr. Jimmy Johnson said. He said we could always find speed. We had some issues finding size. Mario Cristobal is a very, very solid offensive line recruiter. Let's check and see how they're doing so far. So Miami is off to a different situation. So they come out here, they beat Bethune-Cookman, good for them. They come out here, they were struggling against Southern Miss. They ultimately came back and won that game. At Texas A&M, lost that game. Mid-Tennessee State, a very mysterious game, and then lost to North Carolina here. The schedule softens up a bit in the middle here, but then it cranks up at the end. So you see they play at Virginia Tech, they play Duke, and then play Virginia, and then it ends up Florida State at home, at Georgia Tech, who's won 2 in a row after firing their head coach, and then at Clemson, and then home against Pitt. So it's gonna be a struggle, man. They're 2-3. They got to win 4 out of these next 7 games in order to go to a bowl game. It is going to be a difficult road. They can probably do it, but again, I think like the article had said before, the roster needs some work. Tyler Van Dyke is a solid quarterback, but they need a lot of help throughout the rest of the roster. But I'll tell you, Mario Cristobal can recruit pretty well, so I think they'll eventually be there. But this year, we might be looking at a 5 and 7 year first year, and then later on from there, they can develop and build from there. Might not be acceptable. Miami wants to be good. Miami wants to be an AAU institution, and they want to be a good football program. So we'll see if they can do both. Next up here is Billy Napier. Billy Napier actually has a really, really interesting situation where he was on Todd Graham's staff at Arizona State. They get fired. Herm Edwards comes in. The now since fired Herm Edwards. This is back in 2017. And he basically says, hey, Billy Napier, you can be the offensive coordinator if you'd like. And he said, nope, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go be the head coach over at Louisiana at Lafayette. And he does a really good job. Goes 40-12 there. Does a really, really good job. Ultimately comes over to Florida. So for them, it says right here that Florida fell off a cliff. UF won 29 games in Mert Mullen's first 3 seasons, but put forth an embarrassing effort in 2021 while rival Georgia won the national championship. And again, that's a big aspect there. When Will Muschamp was hired as Florida's head coach, they put 3 national championship trophies on display in front of his, I think it was in his office or something like that. And then he turned to the AD and he's like, is this kind of a message here? And then the AD's like, that's the expectation. And you see that's how short the leash is over there at Florida. We'll see how he's doing so far. So a very, very good week 1 surprising victory against Utah. Utah's a top-ranked team. Come out and lose to Kentucky. Kentucky's a solid program. Have a little bit of trouble against South Florida. Ultimately win that game. Lose to Tennessee. Beat Eastern Washington. And then beat Mizzou. Now, think about this. They are currently 4-2. You cannot hold 4-2 any candle to that. It's doing a good job. But look at this here. 1 away game in the first 5 games of the year. So now they go home against LSU, at Georgia, at Texas A&M, home against South Carolina, at Vanderbilt, at Florida State. So they have 4 of the remaining 6 games are on the road. It's going to be tough. I do think they will ultimately win a bowl game. All they got to do is win 2 of these games. I know that the LSU is kind of a weird situation. At Texas A&M, nobody knows what's going on there. South Carolina, you can probably get that. Same with Vanderbilt. It's on the road, but it shouldn't be too difficult. But it's going to be a big difference here. So Billy Napier, I know that for him, got to be able to recruit too. There's a big reason. There's a big reason why Florida does not want Miami in the SEC, because they want to be the only option for people in Florida to be in the SEC, the top flight of football. I think Florida's going to be solid here, but right now 4-2. It does get a little bit tougher towards the end of the season, though. And then we come to Brent Venables. I personally thought that, and I still stand by what I said, although I might have been 1, maybe 2 years too early on my prediction. But I do think that Brent Venables leaving Dabo Swinney's staff out there at Clemson, first of all, that I thought that it was going to hit them a lot harder, a lot sooner. I will say the fact that Clemson's defense is absolutely loaded right now. Brian Bresee and all those guys out there, they're very, very good. I actually am not a big fan of DJ Uyunglele, but Brent Venables leaves, and again, the last time he had left there, they had gave up 70 points to Geno Smith and West Virginia in the Orange Bowl. Brent Venables comes over to Oklahoma, gets off to a 3-0 start, absolutely lays the smackdown on Nebraska, and then they get to conference play, and this is what happened from there. So Brent Venables, a very, very smart defensive mind, gives up 13, 3, and 14 in the first 3 games of the season, enters Big 12 play, gives up 41, 55, and 49. He has a lot of work to do. I knew that Oklahoma, they are going to be a solid program. Remember, this team was, as Lincoln Riley left and went over to Oklahoma, he took a lot of players with him, especially a lot of offensive players. And then Brent Venables has to come in there and instill a defensive mindset on the team, having some issues so far. But I'm telling you right now, I believe in Brent Venables. He will turn this around. However, it doesn't get any easier, man. Kansas is good offense. Iowa State plays a little bit of defense. Baylor does too. West Virginia, I think that they could be surprising out there. Oklahoma State is that. Bedlam's going to be a good series. And then Texas Tech, they have given a lot of teams problem this year so far. So they're at risk of not making a bowl game. I do like this hire. I think it is going to work out in the long run. But up until that moment, man, like I said, 3-3, and there's no guarantee they're going to go to 6-6. Doug Lanning out at Oregon went out there, and actually they're doing pretty good. Bo Nix is out there. The very first week of the season they played Georgia and absolutely got annihilated there. I do like what Oregon has done. They can always recruit. Oregon is, because of the Phil Knight money and because of the emphasis of being good at football, they have a lot of recruiting abilities and things like that. They are going to be just fine out there. Sonny Dykes, actually, surprisingly, he is, of all of these coaches, one of the more experienced ones. Sonny Dykes has been coaching for a long time. The Bear Raid offense, when he was out there with the Cal Bears and things like that, he's definitely a Southerner with a lot of offensive aptitude, and they do score a lot of points. Just came out this last week and beat Kansas at Kansas. I know that's crazy. We're like, that's a big win. It is a big win. But doing a good job for them out there. They basically said, we're not really sure what to expect of them, but TCU, undefeated right now, into the meat of their schedule. Do like what Sonny Dykes is doing so far. Brent Pry is a really, really interesting one. I'm not going to talk much about Tony Elliott. Good luck to Tony out there. I feel like there was a more interesting story out here at Virginia Tech with Brent Pry. Brent Pry was over at Penn State for the longest time as a defensive coordinator, put a lot of dudes from those teams into the NFL. So you come over here and you see all these defensive guys. So he was there from 2016 to 2021. You see Amani Owarie, and then you see, Yetur Gross-Matos. You see Micah Parsons, Odafe Owe. You see, Jaquan Brisker, the Arnold Epiketti. They are doing a really good job of pumping out defensive players. However, for Brent Pry right now, he's having some issues in his first year. So right now, 2-4, and again, a big issue between this is the fact that, they just can't score points. So you see that here, they lost 20-17 to ODU. They won 27-10, and they won 27-7 against Boston College and Wofford. Not exactly the most difficult teams to play. West Virginia scored 10 points. North Carolina scored 10 points. Pitt scored 29 points. Gave up 45, 41, and 33 respectively. So they've got a lot of work to do out there. So 2-3. They are 2-4. And what do they have? They have Miami at home, and then they have at NC State, Georgia Tech, like I said, who has won 2 straight after firing their head coach, at Duke, at Liberty, and Liberty, that's not a guaranteed game either, and then Virginia at home in that rivalry. So Brent Pry's got a lot of work to do. We'll see whether or not it was, James Franklin's ability to recruit, or if it was Brent Pry's ability to develop, whether or not he can do that at Virginia Tech. I do know that if you're able to get into the southeastern Virginia, into the 9 boroughs, Norfolk, Suffolk, Virginia Beach out there, if you can go out there and recruit, you can actually get a lot of good players. You're also, close to, the South there, close to Tennessee, Nashville, not too far from Atlanta. So you have the ability to recruit out there. We'll see if he does it, though, ultimately. So that's my check-in on those coaches so far, and I'm telling you right now, I think that for all the crap that Brent Venables is getting right now, I actually do like them long-term. However, right now, 3-3 and giving up a lot of points in conference play is not looking good for them. I also like Mario Cristobal. I do think that there's a couple things about these that are kind of unique. So where LSU actually, I think, is going to be benefited when Texas and Oklahoma enter the league, because then the SEC West is going to merge with the SEC East, and you're going to have your 3 rivals, and then you have your remaining games outside of those rivals. So it's going to, there's some teams in the East, I think, that are going to dilute the West, meaning it's going to make it a little bit easier for them. I think Florida has the opposite problem, where Florida now is going to have, to add more teams potentially to play. They're going to be playing Alabama. They're going to be playing LSU. They're going to be playing Ole Miss. They're going to be playing Mississippi State a lot more often than they do right now. Not as much as South Carolina's, and not as much Vanderbilt's to kind of alleviate that situation. First of all, Arkansas is good too, man. So that's going to happen to Florida out there. Oklahoma, their schedule is going to only get tougher in a couple of years here, because they're going to go over to the SEC. And even then, even if they don't go over the SEC, next year they have to play BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF. Maybe not necessarily all of them at the same time, but you're going to have to start adding those teams into your schedule there. So that's going to make that a little bit more tough for them too. USC, USC is going to go to the Big Ten. It's going to be a little bit more tough out there too. But Virginia Tech, I think, is going to be okay. Virginia Tech and Miami, they're not going to be crazily hurt, because we already talked about the ACC situation with their scheduling. But I like Mario Cristobal in the long run. I like Brent Venables in the long run. If you don't like Lincoln Riley right now, you're just like a UCLA Bruins fan. But other than that, though, that's the check-in right now for all those head coaches. Get in the comments right now. Who are you most impressed with? who you the least impressed with? What's your kind of situation? Do you think that Brent Venables is going to make it to the end of the season? Get in the comments right now and let me know. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I appreciate it. That's it for me, guys. I am out.